every day's a new opportunity. We can't change the past, but we can learn from
No.
it. We can do better. It's just, and it's interesting. It's like I think about the 25-year-old version of myself, and if I ever had a chance to sit down and talk to him, I would just tell him to relax and not be in such a hurry. Not that he would listen to me, you
Right.
know, but once I sort of let go of trying to control everything and just tried to use what the universe was providing me in that moment, the
Mm-hmm.
happier I got. And I struggle with some anxiety and some depression, and it certainly exacerbates itself when I'm in situations that I can't control. But no matter how hard we try to control something, we can't. It's just like, so I've gotten better at that. And I think within the collaboration of the music in this, on this album, that I had to take a trust fall for that too, because I was so used to doing it all myself. And I'm a decent guitar player, but I'm not like my bandmates are expert at their position.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very happy to welcome Mr. Will Hawkins here. He's with a band called 9 Mile Station. And I'm privileged enough that have the digital copy before anybody else does. It comes out in July.
July 21st.
Sweet. Well, I ain't gonna lie. I rode around and I had it plugged into the car, and me and the wife were listening to it while we was riding around, and she really liked it. I'll have to say she gave you a good compliment. She said you sounded almost like Mark Broussard.
Oh, wow. He's a big influence. That's amazing.
Well, that's
Well,
pretty big coming from her because she's a huge fan.
I'll take it, man. It's just, we are our influences, and I think as we continue on trying to find our own voice, we can't deny the people who influenced us along the way. So it's interesting for me to hear what they hear from me once they hear it.
Well, I can definitely hear an influence like Fleetwood Mac and maybe some Tom Petty. I caught a little bit of Eric Heatherly in there myself, but
Yeah,
you know,
that's all of those were all on my CD and record player growing up.
yeah, I really liked his music. I'm surprised he didn't go further than what he did.
It's interesting with this business, man. It's sometimes it's not about talent. you know?
Yeah, listen to some of the stuff on the radio nowadays. I agree.
Yeah.
But before we go any further, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I'm originally from the Hudson Valley of New York. It's north of New York City along the river. I'm in an area that is like in the area of like Woodstock and Saugerties and Beacon, and it's kind of known for writers and musicians. I grew up listening and reading, and it's a very historic kind of area too. Um, I mean, Dylan and the band and a bunch of others all lived up in Woodstock, and that was like my backyard. Like it's where my family and I vacationed, and so that was a big influence on me growing up. Uh, I started writing songs when I was 14 years old. I plunked away on a guitar, but like it didn't stop me from doing like writing lyrics, and sang in cover bands in high school and college, and then moved to New York City where I played in some original bands.
Mm-hmm.
Put two records out on my own in 2003 and 2004, which did okay, but like much like a lot of other that didn't get past a certain level, but it got some radio play, and I lived in Europe for a while doing some tours. Um, and then I just kind of I hit a wall, and I was putting a lot of investment in what I was doing, but it just didn't seem like a lot was coming back at that point in my life. And I was living with someone and getting a lot of pressure about doing the right thing and being able to provide. And so I'm an event producer by trade. And so I threw myself into that. And for the next 8, 9 years, kind of just did I did what I thought I was supposed to do, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I got some joy out of it. I certainly made some money out of it. And at peak of that time, I didn't miss playing music because I kind of look back at it, everything that had held me back from, and but then in 2017, I lost my mom. She had a stroke, and I was her caregiver for 8 months. And when I came out of that after she died, I was in a dark place. I was lonely. I live in Los Angeles now, so my family's 3,000 miles away, and it was a rough time. And I kind of used music as my therapy. I wasn't doing a whole lot of writing. In fact, I hadn't written a song in 7 or 8 years, and pulled the guitar out of the closet, and that just became my power. And every time I played, my mom was in the room. She was a big supporter of what I was doing. So she was here with me when I was playing, and that gave me some solace. But it's an interesting thing because the songs that I was writing, given how sad and lonely I wasn't writing sad and lonely songs. Like, I already had enough of that, right? I didn't need more. I needed music as an escape. I needed it as an elixir. I needed it for power. So I wrote songs that helped elevate where I wanted to be. Hopeful, optimistic songs about the future and getting somewhere. And even the name 9 Mile Station is a destination. And when I cared for my mom, I'd sit in her hospital room quietly while she was sleeping. And I didn't want to have the TV on, and I didn't want to fiddle with my phone. So I just closed my eyes, and I imagined being in a band and being on tour and just being surrounded by people. And that gave me some peace while she was trying to recover. I just had this movie going on in my head, and that went on for months. And there was this band with some friends of mine called Escondido, and they're an Americana band out of Nashville. And I loved what they did. They chose a destination for the name of their band, and they created this, I don't know, another universe when you'd see them live. They're dressed in the Graham Parsons outfits and stuff. And you didn't think about anything else but their music when you saw them. And I thought maybe I could come up with the name of a band that was a destination too. And, it took a couple months. And I knew I wanted it California based. So I was like looking at atlases and looking at like just lists of names. And then without finding something, I started looking at ghost towns, names of ghost towns. And I came across the name 9 Mile Station, and it just kind of hit me. And it's out in the Mojave Desert, about 4.5 hours northeast of LA. There's not a single brick of it left. It doesn't exist, only in writing. And I started playing around with that in Illustrator and creating logos, and it just sat with me. And I was like, that's the name. So the name of the band existed before I even played with anybody. And it would be another couple years before the members of my band kind of like showed themselves. And 9 Mile Station became the name of the band. It became a place for me like somewhere in the future, somewhere down the road, where it was better than what I was experiencing in that moment. And I'm a student of Stoicism, and Stoicism is just about making the best of the situation and not being defined by the bad things that happen, but using those things to pivot and build off of that. And 9 Mile Station just became this thing that was in the future. I knew it would make me feel better when I got there. Now, mind you, it doesn't exist, right? It only exists in your mind. And then I met Fernando Perdomo by watching, I was watching the movie Echo in the Canyon, and he was in that with Jacob Dylan and Fiona Apple and Beck and Cat Power. And then they had some great legends of the Mamas and the Papas, the Byrds, Neil Young. They were re-envisioning all these great songs from the Laurel Canyon music scene. And I just couldn't take my eyes off him. It inspired me. And I was also sitting there like, I wish I had met someone like that 15 years earlier, maybe to be my Mike Campbell to my Mike Campbell to my Tom Petty, right? It's just like all the great songwriters had a writing partner to come up with the riffs and help structure the song. And I never really had that in my life. When I did my solo stuff, I'd pay people to come in and do sessions with me, but I really didn't have a band. And I think the difference between what you hear now in 9 Mile Station and my own music is there's a cohesiveness and a collaborative nature of what we do together that really elevated the music. So a couple months later, I saw Fernando standing next to a friend of mine on a Facebook post, and I reached out to him, And the end result was him coming and sitting in with us when our guitarist bailed on a show. And it was magic. It was just explosive. And he joined the band that night. And that was November 1st, 2019. And we went into the studio and started recording beginning of July 2020. And then shit hit the fan in March. And we spent the next year and a half in the studio writing songs and recording. And my mentor and dear friend Al Schmidt came in and mixed the record, and that elevated the music even to another level, working with him and engineer Nico Bolas, who both kind of did some producing with us too. And they really guided us as far as like what a song's supposed to be, what the form of a song's supposed to be. And there were times we recorded something and they sent us back, it should be in this key or it should be at that tempo. And we'd be like, oh man, we just go back in the studio and start over. But the end result was this record, which I'm just so proud of. And I think it's everything that the experience from 2017, losing my mom and going through the pandemic and getting out of it. And it represents that whole arc of the experience. But again, I truly believe that there's no such thing as a bad thing that happens. I don't believe in that dogma, whereas like things happen and we got to find ourselves in it. We got to find a way around it. We got to find a way to better ourselves with it. And if we're just going to continue to allow ourselves to be defined by mistakes and disasters and tragedies, then that's all we'll be.
Oh, you ain't lying there. Man, I tell you, the world just seems to have been throwing everything at us lately. The last several years with the pandemic and everything. And, I don't want to make this show about me, but what you're talking about, taking a situation and making something positive out of it. I ended up developing a disease in my spine where the bones are deteriorating. And I've had several surgeries and, I'm on disability. I could easily just kick back and do nothing, but who wants to live their life just sitting on the couch watching TV all day,
Dude, and I'm sorry that you're going through that because there's nothing worse than chronic pain. And it's exhausting, it's infuriating, it's frustrating. I had a hip issue that caused me to get a hip replacement in 2021, but for 18 months I was a miserable son of a bitch because I was just holding on for dear life, trying to get through each day without losing it, and I just couldn't wait to get home 7, 8 o'clock and just sit there with a heating pad so I could just exhale and just take some medication and just not move. And it didn't make me a whole lot of fun to be around, but I did the best I could with it. And and as much pain as I was going through, I knew there were people out there who were going through more and were going through pain that they weren't going to get fixed. Like I had the benefit of being able to get an operation that fixed it, but I know there are people out there that have to deal with that every day. And it's another lesson of you never know what someone else is going through. Someone might respond to you in a certain way and a lot of times has nothing to do with you, but it's their own struggle that they're doing their best with. So I hope that you're able to find some solace in the music and that has become something, the positive out of, again, like you're suffering, but it now pushes you and creates the bandwidth to create these podcasts. And you bring joy to people every time they listen, they discover new music. And maybe if you weren't ill, maybe you wouldn't have found the time to do this. So
that's true.
It's again, with stoicism, it's the belief of just can't feel sorry for yourself. It's just, you just got to use what you have, the tools that are in front of you. You got to eat the food that's on your dish. If you want nutrition, then you got to eat what's provided. And you can sit there and say, I want a steak, but all you've given me is chicken. Well, man, go be hungry for a while then and see how good that chicken tastes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And like you say, I mean, I go through pain, but I've also had friends that had fibromyalgia.
Oh man. Yeah.
And their pain, God, I can't hardly stand what I'm going through. I couldn't imagine what they're going through.
I mean, look at Nick Mars from Motley Crue. He suffered with that his whole entire adult life, where he could barely move, and the guy was on a tour bus and touring the world. It's just like I don't think he gets enough credit for the work that he's done and the amazing like riffs that he's created, all under the auspices of him being under 24-hour pain.
Oh yeah. Yeah, one of my best friends got the same thing that Mick Mars has got. He
Wow.
can't move his neck or anything. But you can sit there and feel sorry for yourself and pout. But what good is it going to do? You can try to find something to bring you joy and bring other people joy.
Dude, I'll tell you, so this is what I read every day. It looks like it's coming in backwards, but it's called the Daily Stoic, and it's daily meditations of from Epicurus and Marcus Aurelius. And today's lesson is the world is unfair, the game is rigged. So go figure it out. You have a choice. You can either focus on the things you don't have or go make the things that you can have, you know? And that's today's
Mhm.
lesson. And it's just every day, just these reminders of like keeping your altitude, you know, and do the best you can with what you have.
What's amazing to me is the magic of music. Because when I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time by myself and went through depression, the whole 9 yards. But I could put on an album, say like, I don't know, Damn the Torpedoes, and my whole attitude would change. I wouldn't even think about the rest of the world.
Oh,
I'm listening to
absolutely,
the
man.
music.
And when you go see live music, though,
Mhm.
that's church, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and you're standing side by side with people who read the same gospel. And when we sing together, it creates community, which is regardless of what you think about religion, when we stand next to each other side by side and we sing hymns and we struggle through those hymns, you know, we're together doing it, and it
Mhm.
creates this community and this tightness amongst us. And when we go to shows and festivals, it's even stronger because we're singing those rather than reading a lyric book. We're singing songs we grew up with next to people that might be strangers, but they're singing those same songs, and they've got these a billion kind of memories that are associated with it. They become the soundtracks of our life, you know,
Mhm.
and we take ownership of some of those songs. You know, it's like as a songwriter, there have been times where people come up to me after a show and tell me what a specific song means to them. And a lot of times it's got nothing to do with what I wrote, which is they made it themselves. And if I think a good songwriter will write these songs in a way that you leave room for the listener to make it theirs. Like and don't get me wrong, there's some great storytelling songs or country
Mhm.
songs, you know, and a lot of John Prine songs that are very specific and they're beautiful for that. But then there's others where it leaves just enough room, just enough like where it's abstract enough where someone can put their own experience within those words and then they make it theirs, you know. And I've used to do radio promotion with signed artists, and I would travel the country with them, and fans would come up and tell them how much a specific song meant to them or how it got them through a breakup or a death. And you know, you put this music out there and you kind of lose some ownership of it in a good way,
Mhm.
you know. And I think that's kind of the point. It's I'm in the process of writing a new song now, and I'm very early on with it, but it's called This Is How You Found Me. And it's about someone coming into your life and not just them like accepting you for you who you are, but for me to accept me for who I am right now. Not like posturing, not trying to create some narrative that makes me more attractive, you know, or more empathetic. But it's more about owning this period in my life and owning who I am. And the song is about, okay, this is who I am, and this is how you found me. Do the best you can with it, you know. And it's almost like a sculpture in a sense where I've got this, instead of a block of wood or a stone that I'm going to be chipping away, I've got an empty page. And instead of like chipping pieces away to find the face in the block, I'm finding an empty page where words emerge like out of the clouds, and they form the narrative and they form the story. And that takes some time, and sometimes it comes right away. Sometimes it's like you're pulling things out of the air. It almost feels like God is in the room with you. And then there are other times where it takes a year or two. You might write a verse and a pre-chorus, might have a chorus, but sometimes it takes a couple of years and you're just sitting there and you're looking at it. And maybe you've got another song you're writing and it has a bridge, and you're like, you know what? Maybe that bridge fits this song. And then that first song kind of gives its life so the second song can thrive, you know? And
Mhm.
being a songwriter, I mean, the words we choose are so powerful because they mean something different to each listener. And a song like California, for instance, that's the first song on the album. I wrote that song during a snowstorm while living in a tenement building in Brooklyn about 15 years ago. And it ended up being prophetic in a sense that, like, I'm here, I'm living in California, but I didn't come out here to be a musician. I came out here with a girl, and I ended up coming back to it. That's not why I'm here. I didn't come out here to be a star. But the song is about new beginnings. It's about, like, a word like California means so much to so many people, but I think we can all agree that it's about reinvention and it's about freedom. It's about being able to leave where you are behind and becoming who you want to be. And I think no matter where we are, whether what state we're in or what country you're in, everyone kind of wants something more for themselves than what they have. And that song is about that. That song is just about closing your eyes and imagining everything you can be. And that kind of like is a theme throughout the record, where it's just making more out of what you have.
California is a cuss word in Texas, though.
I know it is, but Texas is a cuss word here in California, except for Austin, where you are. It's like, I think music and barbecue is the only thing, and tacos is the only thing we can agree on.
Right. Something else about music, you can meet a total stranger, but if you find music in common and you sit there and you talk about your favorite bands or your favorite songs, all of a sudden you got a best friend.
Dude, you're so right. And there are artists and songs that cross over into different cultures. I mean, I think you can play AC/DC's Back in Black anywhere. You could go into a African-American block party and drop the needle on any AC/DC song and people are going to dig it. The same way that you can listen to Tupac Shakur's California and you can drop that needle on anywhere and people are going to dig that too. It crosses politics, it crosses cultures, it crosses bigotry, and prejudices. It's it's like people get to own those songs for themselves, and they make those songs exactly what they need to be for themselves.
Yeah. Look what it did to the culture during the 50s and 60s.
Absolutely.
Brought people together where there used to be a rope to separate people. They'd take down the rope and everybody danced together.
Yeah. I'm very grateful that I've been given this opportunity again. It's just losing my mom was devastating, and especially the way it happened. I had just spoken to her a couple days before, and she was 81 when it happened, but still, like, it's always a shock, especially with something like a stroke. And I was working in my community here in Los Angeles at the time, and I was at a committee meeting when the phone rang and rang and rang and rang, and finally I picked it up, and it was the local police department informing me that they had to knock her door down. And I was on the next plane back home, not knowing what that new reality was going to be. And when she woke up, she was not the same woman that I knew. But as I told my brother at the time, our realities have changed, and who she was doesn't exist, and we got to pull it together and enjoy every minute that we have with her moving forward. And it was an honor of my life to be able to be by her side during that time. I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere else.
Oh, I know. As much as it hurt to say goodbye to my grandfather, just being there when he passed away was everything.
Yeah. And they know I was holding my mother's hand when she passed. I was there. The sun was shining through the hospital room. It was a beautiful August morning. And she was a big fan of Schubert, and we had Schubert on the radio, and she was covered in the blanket that her mother made for her. It's just tried to make it as peaceful and welcoming and loving as possible. Not everyone gets that opportunity, right? So it's and then when I came back to California, it was just I was a shell of who I was. I had a real hard. They always tell you, like, you're not going to be prepared when you lose your last parent. And you just don't know until it happens, right? And then it took a couple of years for me to kind of just get to a point where I felt whole again. And, you know, I can get choked up now talking about it, but for the most part, I celebrate who she is. And I'm grateful for the gift of being able to get, like, her passing gave me the opportunity to get back into music and write songs that have led me to meet people I would have never met. You and I would not be talking right now. The songs wouldn't be on the radio. If my mother hadn't passed her in that moment, in that day, my future would have been very different. And I would love for her to be here today. I would trade this record for her presence any day.
Of course.
But if I had to lose her and this is what I get from it, then that's what's beautiful about it. And a friend of mine once told me, he goes, the things in life that are meant for you will find you. And what I take that is like living in the present. And when you lose something, you grieve it, but again, you can't let it define you. You know, it was meant for you. That loss was meant for you, but that loss also can be an educational moment, or it can change the direction of where your life is if you choose it to be. And I've worked with the homeless here in Los Angeles, and I've met people who lost a parent and then they spiraled, you know, and they couldn't recover. And I know a lot of people who lost that support and their whole life went like to a place where they had a real hard time making it back out of. So I certainly had fear in that moment that I didn't want that to happen to me. And you find strength in places that you didn't even know you had it. And I just kept telling myself that she would want me to be happy. She would want me to thrive. So at any point that I felt weakness or I didn't have the strength, I would remind myself of how disappointed she would be in that moment if she saw me in that state. So it would be back to making music or back to whatever job I was doing at the time, or, you know, trying to present myself in the community the best I could. Because another thing I learned is through all going through adversity, you are the man that people see who you are. And if you don't act with honor and integrity, then that's who you are. And even though you're faced with adversity, it's what you do with that and how you stand tall and how you behave and how you treat people and how you make opportunity for yourself. That is who you are. And it's really easy to just sit in a corner and feel sorry for yourself. But, you know, I think this short period of time we're on this earth, we got to make the best of every day and find the joy in every day that we can.
Definitely.
And this music for me, that was what drove me when I was writing the songs for this album. It was about me making a better world for myself. And surely I wrote these songs with the hope that they would be heard, ultimately, you know, eventually. And I get disappointed sometimes when, you know, we don't get the kind of like, we don't get the venue that we want to play, or the radio station I want to play it doesn't play it. You know, I get disappointed because I want more people to hear it, you know. And when I see the reviews that we do get, we've yet to get even like a mediocre review. And this comes with all humility, you know. It's just like, it's surprising to me when you put this all out there and then it hits people and it affects them a certain way. And the reviews we've been getting for this record have just been off the charts. And it makes me feel like that loss, like something was meant to come out of that, you know. And these songs and this band and this experience wouldn't exist if my mother hadn't sacrificed herself for me to have it.
She gave a part of herself to you.
Absolutely.
And it's your obligation to continue to spread that out through the world.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of there's this phrase, I don't know where it comes from. I got to look it up because I've quoted it often, but there's this thing called the 3 deaths. Are you familiar with that?
No, I can't
So
say
the
that.
3 deaths are, the first death is the physical death. The second death is the interment of the body, whether it be cremated or buried, but the body is buried. The third and final death is the last time anyone says your name. And to me, that is powerful. So my mother's name was Carol Hawkins. She lives with me every day. And when I hear a friend who lost a friend, I'm like, what was their name? Say their name, tell their story. Because we can't, regardless of whether you believe there's an afterlife, the afterlife here on earth is the way people talk about you when you're gone, the legacy that you leave behind, the stories that you leave behind for people to tell, because you're no longer around to defend yourself. You can't, there's no rebuttal, right? You're not here to go, that's not how that happened, you know? So the best you can do is every day live your life. So you give people reasons that when you're gone, like, man, I remember that son of a bitch. He was so awesome. He was a great guitar player, or he was good in the community, but you're not around to tell people, it's like, yeah, that guy stole my car. You know, it's just like, we have a choice every day to leave what legacy behind we want for us. And my mom and my dad were good people. My dad was a policeman. My mom was a homemaker, and she was an administrative assistant, and she worked hard. And every day I try to work hard. Whatever it is that I do, I try to put the kind of effort in. My dad would always say, what's the point of doing something if you can't do it the best way you can? And I was one of those kids always like trying to run from, what I was supposed to do, or I do something half-assed just so I can go do something else. And he was just like, look, everything you do is a reflection of you. Do the best you can with everything, and that's all I try to do with his music. It's when I'm working with the guys, when we're writing songs and recording, all I want to do is what we put out there. I want it to be the best possible thing.
Yeah. Well, that's beautifully said. And I totally agree with you. For a lot of my life, I spent alcoholic and a drug addict. I wasn't a good father, but that's not the way I want to leave this world. I definitely cleaned up. I don't drink anymore. The only drugs I take are the ones that I have to take the doctor prescribes to me. And I try to be the best dad that I can. But now I kind of got a second chance because I'm a grandpa.
Wow.
And
that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. I don't want my grandkids seeing that drunk and that drug head that my kids had to see.
Yeah. And now you get the opportunity to show your kids that too, so every day is a new opportunity. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. We can do better. It's just, and it's interesting, it's like I think about the 25-year-old version of myself. And if I ever had a chance to sit down and talk to him, I would just tell him to relax and not be in such a hurry. Not that he would listen to me, but once I sort of let go of trying to control everything and just tried to use what the universe was providing me in that moment, the happier I got. And I struggle with some anxiety and some depression, and it certainly exacerbates itself when I'm in situations that I can't control. But no matter how hard we try to control something, we can't, it's just like, so I've gotten better at that. And I think within the collaboration of the music on this album, that I had to take a trust fall for that too, because I was so used to doing it all myself. And I'm a decent guitar player, but I'm not like my bandmates are expert at their position, right? And I have hard time sometimes communicating with them what exactly I want from them because I don't know the language, but I could show it to them on the guitar. And sometimes my limitations prevented me from collaborating because I felt insecure about my abilities. But my talent is in my songwriting and my singing. So I let that be the things that I can bring to the table. And then I rely on my bandmates to bring what they do well. And once I kind of let go of the things that I can't do and embrace the things I can, it changed how we made music together.
It's amazing that music has a way of just being that communication. I interviewed a guy that he stuttered real bad. And I know what it's like. I stutter myself, not like I did when I was a kid, and he didn't know how to communicate to people sometimes, but he could through his music.
Yeah. Look, I have friends that their children are autistic and they're like geniuses on the piano, and they can't communicate properly, but man, can they play guitar or can they play piano, or chess, and it's just, and again, this is, I do some substitute teaching in between the other work I do. And a lot of times you get put into these special ed classes, and some parents, they get wound up or upset that their child isn't perfect, right? They have that because they have this view of what their child is supposed to be. But like anything else, it's just like you can't use a toaster as a lawnmower, right? You can't judge a fish for the way it climbs a tree. We all have these abilities and these gifts, and we have to judge them for what we're able to do. And I saw this interview with Ben Affleck and Matt Damon recently, and when they were writing Good Will Hunting, Ben said to Matt, judge me for my best ideas, not for the shitty ones, you know? And it's just, so when it comes to these kids, it's like they have their own gifts and they bring their own strengths to the table. And you have to build those strengths up rather than criticize for the kid's never going to be a first baseman, right? Never going to play for the Yankees. But what other tools and gifts do they have? And I think, you know, more contemporary parents are using that to build their kids up rather than to criticize them for the things they can't do. And I think that's an amazing thing of this, the new generation of parents being able to find the strengths in their kids in ways that maybe our parents couldn't, but they didn't have the tools to do.
Well, you have to give them room to make mistakes. That's the
Yeah.
only way they're going to learn.
Right.
And if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not doing anything.
Yeah. And mistakes, again, they're not mistakes, they're lessons. And I think these, again, we talk about the power of how we use words, right? And whether they be lyrics or in the way we communicate with our friends and our family and our children, there's power in the words that we use. And there's no such thing as a mistake. There's a lesson to be learned. Now, if you do that same thing 3 times, yeah, that's a fucking mistake. But, you know, but for the most part, people are just learning. They're going through their day. They're figuring stuff out as they go along. And, you know, I wasn't always this way, but as I've gotten older, it's just, I don't want chaos around me. I don't date chaos. I don't hang around chaos. I don't drink with chaos. I sure as shit don't have chaos in my house, you know? And when I decided that I said no to chaos, my life got a lot better. It got a little more boring, but it settled me in a way that the people that I got to spend time with always got the best of me because I wasn't responding to some crazy shit that I allowed to come into my world that shit had no business being involved with in the first place. And this is kind of like the emotional discipline that we all try to shoot for. Is like, we all want peace, we all want love, we all want prosperity, but a lot of times we're the ones who are building the walls that prevent us from getting it.
Well, and people don't want to put in the work. They just think it's going to happen. And
Yeah,
it's not just going to
there's
happen.
certainly some of that too. Yeah.
And
So we've got this album that's coming out on July 21st. It's going to be available everywhere. We're playing the Troubadour here in Los Angeles on July 29th to celebrate the release. And the Troubadour is like Stubbs down in Austin. It's a legendary venue that everyone and anyone has played at some point in their career. And you can see anyone play at Wembley or play at Madison Square Garden. Well, the road to those venues is through the Troubadour. So I'm super excited to be able to get to play there for the first time. All my heroes have played there, and I've been in LA now for about 11 years. And again, I didn't come here to be a musician. So when I think about my journey, when I got here and starting to play music again 4 years ago, and in 4 years, I get to play like a place like the Troubadour. It's just, I feel blessed, and I'm just so grateful for everything that's led me to this point, the good, the bad, the ugly, because I couldn't have imagined any of these things happening 5-10 years ago. And it's just, I have to pinch myself sometimes. It's just like, I get to do this and I get to play, and people get to respond and enjoy the music in a way that just didn't happen my first time around. So it's been an incredible journey.
I meant to ask you this earlier. Have you always played the same style of music?
Pretty much. I mean, there's always been a bit of a twang in what I do. My dad was a big Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings fan. I think subconsciously I might have started leaning that way as a way to build a bridge to him. I didn't realize that until I was older, but I think that might have been something that I did subconsciously to try to to get some approval from him. And then I just enjoyed it. You know, I love Waylon. I love Johnny, you know, that to me, and Steve Earle, you know, those are my favorites. I love Lyle Lovett too. And, when I was coming up, people would say, oh, you should move to Nashville, or you should move to Austin. And I didn't really feel that what I do really fit into that box. There might have been some influence of it, but when I went to visit, I didn't really feel that I could in good conscience make the move closer to that sound and feel authentic. And I remember reading an interview with Lyle Lovett at the time. This was like 2004, 2005. And I felt like was stagnating in New York. And I was thinking about maybe moving to either Austin or Nashville. And in this interview, Lyle was living in Los Angeles, and his grandparents died, and he bought the ranch, the original ranch that his family had owned for like 150 years, that his parents grew up, his dad grew up on, and he was on as a kid. And he bought the ranch, and he moved from LA back to Texas. And he's like, I want to embrace who I am. I want to embrace where I'm from. And that really stuck with me. And like I said, my family's from that Hudson Valley region. So I rented a converted barn up in Cold Spring, New York, and I spent 10 months up there reconnecting with who my family and who I was. And it was weird. I wasn't able to finish much when I was there. And that at the time, I remember that being frustrating to me, not be able to finish a song. I had a bunch of half finished ones, 25, 30 half finished songs, but I really enjoyed myself up there. But the whole point of being there was like to get away from New York City for the quiet. And the minute I moved back to New York, I finished almost all those songs within a month. And I realized the pace and the demand that I had grown to really love about New York was what helped me finish things. And where the country gave me the opportunity to think and really dig deep on who I was and what I wanted to be, which New York refuses to do because of for all the reasons why it pushes you to get things done. It's so busy and so demanding that it doesn't give you the time to really, really get into some deep thought. But I got back to my apartment. I finished up all those songs, and those songs ended up being my second solo record called Ghost Town. And I just kind of just embraced the fact that no matter what I do, it's always going to have a little twang. You can't get away from your influences. So I've embraced it. I don't make any excuses for it. You know, it's I think it's an amalgam of a couple different kinds of genres of music that starts with Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings and makes its way through Neil Young and Tom Petty and Bruce Springsteen, and maybe even some Nick Cave and some Lou Reed. And, you know, so I'm well aware of what colors make up my music, and I no longer make excuses for them. I embrace them all wherever they may be found.
Main thing is you be you. You
Yeah.
have to enjoy what you enjoy. You know, you can get
And
with someone and they can, if you let them, they'll try to mold you into someone that you're not. And
absolutely. And I
you got to
think
get
that
away from that.
I think the listener, they know. They may not be able to put their finger on it, but they know something when something's genuine and authentic, you know, and they respond to it. And what's interesting is, as much as I liked and proud of the original music I did on the first two albums of solo work, the way that people have been responding to the new music has just been something I didn't anticipate. And I I think some of that comes with age and maturity, and a lot of that just comes with, I don't really care what you think of me. This is who I am, you know, and just standing by it without making those excuses. And just like the same way that you stand next to your brother, you either put your arm around him, you say him, you know, we're part of each other. I love you, or you don't. And then that, who are you at that point? You know, and so I'm just embracing the best and worst of me. And I think the stories that come out of that, listeners they're connecting with in ways that just didn't in the past, because maybe I was afraid of really showing those things of myself in the way I can now.
You said the album comes out July 21st.
On July 21st on all streaming and all like online stores. And we're going to be hitting the road. We got plans for the fall to start getting around. So I'm hoping that we'll find our way into Texas and into Austin, and hope that we get to see you there. And you can find our music at no, I'm sorry, that was my own. You can find our music at 9 Mile Station Music across all platforms. It's the same ID. Our website is 9milestationmusic.com.
I want to thank you for coming on and spending your time with me, man. And I am looking forward to seeing y'all when you come to town.
Well, Kyle, thank you so much for having me. And I know that the band's going to be looking forward to seeing the interview and meeting you when we get down to Austin. And I'm just very grateful for you to have me on your show today. And we're looking forward for the world to hear the music. And it's just been one hell of a journey to get here.
Also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, well, hit that subscribe button. I hope you'll come back. You can like this, share it, put on those notifications. And for all my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
Gave me what I needed, took the devil out of me.